So it's about a month away from the WCQ, and we have some new decks going into the event. As a matter of fact, there's a whole entire set that is legal just day of the WCQ. The way I have this structured is high chance of winning. The decks up here are going to be the best decks of the format. Top 8, while not the best of the bunch, I think these decks here are going to be at least tier 1.5. Next tier will probably be in the top 16. These are going to be like tier 2 decks, might make it day 2. These are going to be more like the rogue strategies. Bubble out day 1. There's going to be people that are going to try to play these decks and it just not go very well. Side event menace. These are going to be the decks that people are going to take to side events and be an absolute menace at. And last tier is how are you here? Pretty self-explanatory, just how are you here? Why are you here? Anyways, Sword Soul, I'm gonna put this at Bubble Out Day 1. Like, it has access to Protoss again, but also, I don't think Sword Soul is that good without Baron. Like, I might be wrong, but it's just very okay. Light Sworns. So, I've seen a lot of people combine Light Sworns with tier limits and some other decks as well, like Bystials and whatnot. So let's just say this is going to be Light Sworn Bystial. I think it's going to bubble out day 1. Like, I haven't seen this deck anywhere. I just think Light Sworns are just kind of okay. Voiceless Voice, I think will be in the top 8. It's a strong deck, and the Melodious Engine just helps the deck out quite a lot. I've seen some people play Voiceless Horus, but Melodious definitely helps out the deck quite a lot. Plants, Reka, and everything that goes in between. We could go with the full title here, but we're just gonna call it Plants. I am gonna say it might make it to day 2. Shiny Sarcophagus. This is the whole, actually, I don't know why these two are separate. Shiny Sarcophagus. So, I don't know what this deck does, to be perfectly honest. Like, I faced it a multitude of times, and I don't know what the deck does. This deck is so fragile. Like, it's kind of cool that it gets its own Dark Magician, and it gets Dark Magician support, but also, what does it do outside of that? So, I am going to put this firmly into how are you here? Salamandrates. They are pretty okay. So, my friend Dakota, I think he placed in top 8 at the regional down in New Mexico. I could be wrong. I don't quite remember what his placement was, but I know he did very well. However, that's not the majority of Salad players. And I don't think Salad is good enough to be higher than might make it to day 2. Might make it to day 2 at like the very bottom end of might make it to day 2. Tenpai, I think will be at least in top 8. The deck is really freaking strong, and it's only getting stronger with info. They have a turn 1 plan, and they can shut off battlefield effects in the main phase, so all their monsters are unaffected in the main phase, and you can't do anything in the battle phase. Whitewoods, I think, has a pretty high chance of winning. It's not a deck in the OCG, and the reason for that is because of Max C. However, in a format where Max C does not exist, this deck can actually thrive. Plus, it gets so much advantage from the Toy Box engine, and also you can loop Runic Fountain several times in the same turn. It also can make Centurion more reliable for the Calamity Lock. It's just kind of insane of what this deck can do. Marincess. It is pretty alright. I am going to put it into might make it to day 2. Goblin Bikers. I think it's going to be side event menace. Tier limits. So we are getting the Fiendsmith engine, which can make a Beatrice and have an on-demand fusion summon. And it also gets Kashtira support, but I don't think it's much stronger than maybe possibly will make it to day 2. So, Hero. So, at the last WCQ that we had, Hero, I think, made it to at least day 2, or got top 32 or something like that. It made it very far. It made it pretty far in. But, like, this deck can play through hand traps like nobody's business. And it could also put out one of 2 floodgates, one of 3 floodgates, actually. Dark Law, Plasma, and Dark Angel. With a DP and my favorite contact to back it up. But is it enough to beat any of these decks? I don't think so. So I think it might make it to day 2 again. Thunder Dragon. So here's the thing about Thunder Dragon. It has a lot of access with the Nemesis engine and can make a Chaos Angel and a whole bunch of silly nonsense with the Chaos cards. So I'm going to put this at a firm might make it to day 2. Just slightly above Marion says. Centurion, without the Whitewoods engine, I think it will probably be in the top 16. Like, it can do Calamity Lock. I've seen a couple people use Horus to kind of back it up, but it's just basically King Calamity Turbo, which is kind of strong, and then you could just OCK the next turn, which is kind of dumb, to be honest with you. Exodia, with the new Millennium cards, and all that. So I really don't know if these 2 are 2 different decks, or the same deck, or the same series, or what have you. I don't know. I don't know what either of the 2 decks do. Like, I faced them, and I don't know what they do. Help me! Help me! Understand! I don't get it! What do these 2 decks do? How are you here? Like, I don't at least kind of know how this one's here. It's because it's info, and people are going to be testing out some jank. But still, it's like, how are you here? Why are you here? I don't get it. Branded. So, a part of me wants to put it at high chance of winning. This is also considering it won over in somewhere in Europe. It won that WCQ. But does that translate to North America WCQ? I don't think so. Not against some of these other decks that are here. Like, it has a pretty good chance of being able to square off against them, but I don't think it's that impressive compared to the other decks. I'm going to put it probably top 8. Like, definitely top 8. I don't think it's going to win the event, but it will definitely be in the top 8. Snake Eye Fire King. So this deck is also pretty strong. Like, this deck, like, if the Fire King engine just doesn't fire, it has the Snake Eye engine to just do whatever with. And vice versa. If both engines go off, you have a really scary board that your opponent has to deal with. I think it will probably be in the top 16 at least. Vanadium. I think this deck might make it to day 2. Chimera. So this deck is pretty damn strong. Like, my friend Dakota has played this deck a couple times, that I've seen him at least play it, and holy crap, it's kind of scary. I've tested this deck on this channel. It's just more branded. So I think this deck will probably be in the top 16. Purely. Like, I just lost against this deck a couple weeks ago. Not happy about that, but all this deck does is basically just sit on a giant towers, which if your opponent knows how to play around, it's manageable. I think this deck is going to bubble out day 1. Pure Snake Eye. I think this deck is probably going to sit still at tier 0. Like, I think it's going to be tier 0 simply because we have Phantom Eve Bell just coming out in the Battles of Legend, which that's fine. But also the Fiendsmith stuff, which people are going to be clamoring to get at the WCQ, which it's gonna be hilarious. There's gonna be people who are gonna be clamoring to get all the Fiendsmith stuff, which, by the way, the Fiendsmith is a secret rare. So, which you need 3 of, by the way. So, with it being a new set being released on the WCQ and having high rarity, it's going to be a strong deck, but how many people are going to be having it? I don't know. So, we'll see. But I think, for the most part, Snake Eye is going to be at tier 0. So, Resonator, Bestial, Horus. Like, I've seen this deck a couple of different places. Like, I don't think I've faced it myself, but I've seen what this deck can do. And it's kind of scary. So, I think this deck will make it to... might make it to day 2. Orcast. Orcast can play a couple different ways. It can play with Bestials, and I think it also plays with the Resonators. I don't quite remember. Or it can play the route that it did before Harp Horror got banned. Either which way, I think this deck is going to bubble out day 1. Flu. So it is the anti-meta of this format. In the past few formats, for that matter. Like, the deck is okay. Like that's how I kind of feel about anti-meta. It's okay. Like, it'll win matches, but I don't think it's strong enough to even come close to over here. I think it might make it to day 2. Ritual Beast. So, the deck just kind of combos forever. And once it's done comboing, it's like, you can technically play, but not really. So, I think this deck might make it to day 2. Melodious. Here's the thing about Melodious. It's good as an engine. As a deck, I think it's very okay. So, with that said, I think it'll bubble out day 1. Ice Barrier. So, it's just basically Floodgate deck, but also... it can make Trishula 3 times in the turn. I think it might make it to day 2. Just on that alone. Sprite. So, I mean, it's a good deck. I don't think it's the best deck, but it's definitely good. I think I'm going to put it at the very bottom of Bubble Out day 1. Runic Stun. Oh, man, I hate this deck so much. Like, it's so annoying to go against. Like, the big problem is just Synchro Zone. Having Hugin to back up the Synchro Zone and having cards in hand to back up the Hugin in the Synchro Zone. I think it might make it to day 2. As much as I hate to say it, it might make it to day 2. Rescue Ace with Snake Eye. So the deck is, I think, okay. Like, it's a control deck that can go in Snake Eye shenanigans. I think it might make it to day 2. So Runic, Bestial. I'm going to put this at the higher end of might make it a day 2. Memento. So Memento is strong. Like, after Info, this deck is actually pretty strong. Like, I'm going to put it at the low end. No, I'm going to put that high end of might make it a day 2. Kashtira. So, I really don't know what Kashtira does outside of being an engine at this point. Like, I've seen a few people splash it into a few different decks, but as a deck, I don't know what it does. So I'm gonna put this at Side Event Menace just simply because I don't know what it does. Like, there's gonna be people that try to play it, but I don't know what it does. Like, I think it just sits on a bunch of monsters at this point, but I don't know. I don't know what it does. I don't know anymore. Yubel. So, like I said before, the Fiendsmith stuff is coming out on Info, which is high rarity, at least for the Fiendsmith. It's going to be difficult to get, but I think enough people will be able to get the deck, probably even before the event. I think it has a pretty high chance of winning, because the deck is just so resilient, and just so, what the hell were they thinking? It's just ridiculous how strong this deck is. I think it has one of the highest chances of winning, if not the highest. Dragon Link. I'm going to put it firmly into Side Event Menace. It's just not a good deck at this point. I do not envy Dragon Link players here. Sky Strikers. There's probably going to be a lot of people trying to use Sky Strikers in a bunch of different ways. I think the deck by itself is okay. I think you have to be a really talented player to play Sky Striker at this point. With that said, There are plenty of talented players out there, so I'm going to put this into might make it a day 2. Vanquish Soul. So this deck was kind of cool, but then it became there could be only one turbo, and then there could be only one got limited. So the deck just doesn't do a whole lot anymore from what I've seen. So I think this deck is going to bubble up day 1. I think there's going to be plenty of people trying to enter it, but failing miserably. Labyrinth. So this deck, it does some cool stuff. It's another control deck. It's not really combo oriented. You kind of have to know what you're doing. So I think this deck might make it a day 2. And that's the list. If any of you have any comments about any of the decks discussed, or if I missed anything, let me know down below. And with that, goodbye.